happen to live at one of the most interesting periods of time in U.S. history. You also happen to be living in one of the most interesting times in global history. And it is my contention that this is one of those periods, because it's going to be so interesting, that it really behooves us to take a good, close look at the future. The good news is that after 5 years of intensive study, I can boil down everything I think about in a single sentence, which is that the next 20 years are going to be completely unlike the last 20 years. And this is a very important concept if you plan for the future, if you're holding stocks for the long haul, bonds, equities, whatever your plans and dreams are. I think that the point of view I've got is at least worth your consideration to accept or reject. And in order to get there, I need to talk about a couple of things, because my belief is that we can't just look at the economy all on its own, but we have to understand what's going on in energy. Because if we solve energy, I think all we're doing is squeezing the balloon and it pops out over here in the economy. And further, there's enough evidence out there, there are enough red, yellow warning lights on our dashboards globally to suggest that there's big trouble in the environment as well. And it behooves us to look at all three together. So that's what the crash course is. It's my attempt to put all three of these things into one spot. So the first thing I want to say is that because of that simple statement, because all money is loaned into existence, it enforces a set of behaviors at the corporate level, individual level, every level, where we have an economy that by its design must grow in order to be happy. So let me take a second to define a second piece, the difference between problems, which have solutions, and predicaments, which have outcomes. Knowing whether you're in a predicament or a problem is a critical component of understanding how you're going to shape your response to that. So here's an example. These two gentlemen have a problem. And it's a problem because there's solutions, right? We can lower a rope, or perhaps they could climb up, or maybe somebody could put a big crash pad below, and this can be solved in a variety of ways. This gentleman is in a predicament, meaning he's got outcomes, and the point for this gentleman is he going to land on his feet or is he going to belly flop? He can't, no matter how much he wants to treat it as a problem, pinwheel his arms fast enough and end up back at the top of the cliff. So knowing where we are with respect to whether we're facing problems or predicaments is a critical component, I believe. Now, this might be hard to see from the back, especially the red line. Take my word for it. What we're charting here is growth in energy consumption starting in 1849 and growth in the economy starting at the same time. And these two lines very closely correlate and track. Where I'm stating an obvious thing here, which is that energy and the economy are intrinsically linked. In fact, economic growth cannot happen without growth in energy, as far as we know it so far. Now here's a graph of US oil production starting from the 1920s and progressing through to current time. And what we can note about this is that there's a peak in production in the United States in around 1970. It's just under 10 million barrels per day. So that peak happened. That's a fact. It's a hard fact. It exists as a statement. And because we like to consume more than we produce, this orange wedge I've just brought in is the amount we must import in order to make up the difference. And that importing is more of a predicament than a problem. It's something that we must manage. It's not something that we can, at this point, knowing everything we know about energy sources in the US, solve by drilling more holes or being more clever about how we drill and where we drill. But I don't actually care about the amount of energy per se, and I don't even care about the cost of energy in terms of dollars. The most important concept, and this is one I really want to get across today, is this concept of net energy. Net energy meaning that when we go out and we explore for some energy and we get some energy out, we find a 10 billion barrel find, and yay, so we get 10 billion barrels of energy out, we also need to be aware of how much energy it took us to get there. So here's a chart. This is a chart where we're looking at net energy charted against the energy used to get energy. So this is energy out, energy in. Energy out is the green portion, energy in that it took us to find that is the red portion. All the way on your left is graphed a 50-to-1 return, meaning that if we found 100 barrels, it took 2 to get those out. And all the way on the right, where this cliff forms in the green zone, they meet at 1. Because it takes 1 barrel of oil to find a barrel. At that point, you might not as well even find it. It's just you're spinning your wheels. And the critical part around this is that that green portion actually represents the surplus energy that's available to society. that we get to parse out and do anything we want with. We can create jobs that create credit derivatives or whatever we want to do with it. It's up to us, but the complexity that we enjoy, the prosperity that we feel today is a function of how much surplus energy we have, not necessarily the cost of it. And so over here, I'm drawing it, this yellow box now is showing the range between 10 to 1 and 5 to 1 return. We have a lot of green under us at that point in time. But between 5 to 1 and 1 to 1, we go down this thing called the energy cliff. And knowing where we are on this little curve is incredibly important. It's deeply important. So let's look at oil, for instance. In 1930 and prior, it's estimated that there were 100 to 1 returns. So this goes way off to the left of the chart. I couldn't even fit it on the screen. And then as we cast forward, in 1970, the estimate was, well, we were getting about 25 to 1 returns. Still a huge amount of green under that little circle right there. In 1990, the estimates that I was able to find pointed to somewhere between 10 to 1 and 18 to 1 as a net energy return. And oil finds today, like the BP find I just described to you, are thought to be somewhere potentially in the range of 3 to 1, but we don't know. We don't have really good quality data on that I've been able to access or find yet that tells us really where we are on this curve. But it's important because if all of a sudden we're at 3 to 1, I've just drawn the part where now that red is encroaching onto the green part, and the green part's what we care about because that's the part that gives us the lifestyles to which we become accustomed and gives us our sense of what's possible in the future. And if we were to transition completely over to a corn-based ethanol program, this is the world that we'd be living in. Little tiny green wedge that we're all trying to figure out how to put our former lifestyles and roles into, and I would submit to you that it's not possible, that the levels of surplus energy that are available to us from some of the current technologies on that basis alone would tell us they're not ones that we would want to hinge our entire future on. We might want to think about other places to go for that. So here's a chart. It came out from the International Energy Agency and their World Energy Outlook for 2008. Remarkable chart for me. What we're looking at with all these colors, the blue on the bottom is conventional oil. As Libby mentioned, that's the light, sweet, easy stuff. It's conventional, conventional being a euphemism for cheap in cost in terms of dollars, also a euphemism for high net energy return. And I've drawn a red bar on there which signifies to today, and the startling thing that came out to me in this graph is that that light blue part, for the first time in a major publication from a major agency, admitted that we are past peak oil for conventional oil. But again, the conventional oil is the oil with a high net energy return. And on that basis alone, this is a chart that tells me, regardless of when the true peak comes, because we've managed to layer in a variety of non-conventional sources, this is the one that tells me we're going to be experiencing lower and lower net energies as we go forward. And those ripple out through our economy in terms of prices, or sometimes the prices collapse our economy. There's a lot of things that interact with that, but understanding the net energy is really the critical component. And with that, what I want to do is connect two of the E's, and I am looking at an economic system that requires and demands a certain amount of growth to happen on a consistent basis, connected to the most important energy source, the most fungible, the most useful energy source that we know about, which is oil and its petroleum derivatives, which can't grow, at least from a surplus energy standpoint, according to everything that I've been reading about and looking at. And this is something that I believe is going to be shaping our future over the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years. And I wanted to give you a sort of heads up on this particular concept, because to me, this is the framing for how we should be viewing, how we're using our remaining surplus. We really should be using it in very creative, very intelligent ways, in a stewarding and a shepherding sort of a way, because I believe that the decline in net energy of our current finds is a predicament. It's not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.